Part 1. The Unexpected Cargo. The shuttle bay doors opened with a hiss that echoed through the massive station. Taeho stepped out, carrying 2 bags that were probably too heavy and a thermos of coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago. He looked around at the Galactic Concordat Academy with wide eyes. Ships from dozens of worlds sat in neat rows. Creatures he had only seen in videos walked past him without a second glance. This was it. His first day at the most important school in known space. A floating robot approached him and scanned his identification chip. It beeped once and projected a map toward his dormitory. Taeho thanked it out of habit even though he knew it could not care. He had read that humans were one of the few species that said thank you to machines. The hallways were crowded with students. Insect-like Kittik clicked their mandibles in conversation. Crystalline Luminex refracted light as they moved, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. Aquatic Narration floated in mobile water tanks, their tentacles pressing against the transparent walls. Taeho had studied all of these species before coming here, but seeing them in person was completely different. He found his room and started unpacking. His roommate had not arrived yet, which gave him time to arrange his things and maybe take a nap. The orientation assembly was in 2 hours, and he wanted to make a good impression. Director Malin stood at the podium in the main assembly hall, welcoming the new students. She was human, like Taeho, and one of only 5 humans on the entire faculty. Earth had joined the Concordat just 10 years ago, and they were still proving themselves worthy of membership. Taeho sat near the back, trying not to stare at the incredible diversity around him. Hundreds of species all gathered in one place to learn diplomacy and cooperation. It felt like a dream. Then the alarm went off. It was not a loud alarm, but everyone in the hall immediately stopped talking. A series of 3 short pulses followed by a long one. Taeho did not know what it meant, but he could see the effect it had on the other students. The Kittik drew their limbs close to their bodies. The Luminex dimmed their natural glow. Even the Narration retreated deeper into their tanks. They were afraid. Director Mei Lin touched her communication device and listened for a moment. Her expression did not change, but Taeho noticed her grip tighten on the podium. She looked human enough to read, at least to another human. "Students, please remain calm," she said in Galactic Standard, the common language everyone used. "We have a late arrival that was not on the original manifest. The Vrex delegation has requested permission to dock." The word Vrex caused an immediate reaction. Students began talking in dozens of languages at once. Some stood up looking for exits. Others activated personal shields that Taeho had not even known they were carrying. Taeho leaned toward a Kittik student sitting next to him. "What are the Vrex?" The Kittik stared at him with compound eyes that showed no emotion, but its voice translator made its fear very clear. "You do not know the Vrex? Deathworlders, apex predators. They have never joined any alliance or sent representatives to any gathering. If they are here, something very bad is happening." The shuttle docked. Through the observation windows, Taeho could see a ship that looked more like a weapon than a transport. It was all sharp angles and dark metal with no decorative elements whatsoever. The airlock opened and Ambassador Korval entered the station. He was enormous. Nearly 3 meters tall, covered in overlapping scales that looked like black glass. His eyes were golden and forward-facing, the mark of a predator. When he moved, it was with perfect efficiency. No wasted energy, no unnecessary motion. Every step was calculated. Behind him, something smaller followed. At first, Taeho thought it was a pet or maybe a piece of equipment. Then he realized it was another Vrex, maybe a third the size of Korval, but still larger than most species in the room. A child. Korval had brought his child. The assembly hall fell completely silent. Director Malin walked down from the podium, her face carefully neutral. She stopped at a respectful distance from the Vrex ambassador. "Ambassador Korval, welcome to the Galactic Concordat Academy. We were not informed that you would be bringing a juvenile." Korval's voice was deep and resonant. "Rin is my offspring. Where I go, she goes. This is our way. Is there a problem?" Malin hesitated for just a moment. "We do not have facilities prepared for juveniles, especially not for a species we have never hosted before. We will need time to make arrangements." "Then make them," Korval said simply. "We will wait." The young Vrex Rin looked around the assembly hall with bright, curious eyes. When her gaze passed over the students, several of them flinched. She clicked her claws against the floor, and the sound echoed like gunshots in the silence. Director Maylin called an emergency faculty meeting immediately after the assembly. Daeho, as a student representative, was required to attend. He sat in the back of the conference room watching the adults panic in very professional ways. "We cannot accommodate this," a Luminex professor said, their light pulsing with distress. Vrex juveniles are born with fully active hunting instincts. They do not develop emotional regulation until they are nearly adults. This child could kill half the student body before she even understood what she had done. "We cannot refuse them either," another professor argued. The Vrex have never sought contact with the Concordate before. Turning them away now could mean losing any chance of future relations. "Then what do you suggest?" Maylin asked. "Who here is qualified to supervise a Vrex juvenile?" Silence filled the room. Every professor had a reason why they could not do it. The Kittics said their pheromones would confuse the child. The Narration said their environment was incompatible. The Luminex said their rigid crystalline structure could shatter if struck. They went around the entire room. Every species had an excuse. Every adult had a reason to refuse. Daeho raised his hand. The room turned to look at him. He suddenly felt very small and very stupid, but he kept his hand up. "I will watch her," he said. Director Maylin stared at him. "Daeho, you are a student. You do not understand what you are offering." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But everyone else is too scared. Someone has to help. Humans are supposed to be good at the weird stuff, right?" A Chittic professor laughed, a strange clicking sound. "The human thinks he can babysit a Vrex. This is either incredible courage or incredible stupidity." "Probably both," Daeho agreed. "But I am still offering." Maylin pulled him aside after the meeting. She explained in detail what the Vrex were capable of. Their young were born with hunting instincts fully developed. Their play consisted of stalking practice. Their bite force could shatter bone. They did not understand concepts like gentleness or restraint. Daeho listened to all of it. When she finished, he asked, "So basically like a very large, very smart dog?" "This is not a pet, Daeho." "I know," he said. "But Director, look around. Every species here is either predator or prey in their thinking. They are all afraid of each other in different ways. Maybe humans can be different. Maybe we can be the ones who are not afraid." "You should be afraid," Maylin said quietly. "Fear keeps you alive." "Fear is useful," Daeho agreed. "Panic is not. And right now everyone is panicking." Maylin studied him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "I will speak with Ambassador Corval. If he agrees, we will try this for 1 week. 1 week, Daeho. If anything goes wrong, I understand." That night, Daeho could not sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Tomorrow, a Vrex juvenile would be his responsibility, a creature that every species in the galaxy feared. He thought about backing out. He could go to Maylin in the morning and say he had changed his mind. No one would blame him. Everyone expected him to fail anyway. But then he thought about Rin, standing in that assembly hall watching everyone flinch away from her. She was just a child, but already, the entire galaxy saw her as a monster. Someone had to see her differently. Daeho decided it might as well be him. Part 2, The Human Doesn't Understand Fear Morning came too quickly. Daeho met with Ambassador Corval in one of the station's formal meeting rooms. The Vrex ambassador sat perfectly still, watching the human with unblinking golden eyes. It reminded Daeho of the way cats watched birds. "Director Maylin tells me you have volunteered to supervise my daughter," Corval said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Not threat, exactly. More like assessment. "Yes, sir," Daeho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why?" It was a simple question, but Daeho knew it carried weight. He thought about giving a diplomatic answer, something about cultural exchange and learning opportunities. Instead, he told the truth, because everyone else is too afraid and she is just a kid who needs someone to watch her. Corval tilted his head slightly. "You understand what my daughter is capable of?" "I have been briefed," Daeho said. "Multiple times. Very detailed briefings. And you are not afraid?" "I am terrified," Daeho admitted. "But being afraid and running away are two different things." For the first time, something that might have been approval flickered in Corval's eyes. "You are honest. That is good. Vrex can smell fear, but we respect honesty more. Very well. I will allow this. But understand, human, if my daughter is harmed in any way, I will consider it a declaration of war against my entire species." "Understood, sir." And if she harms you, Corval continued, I will consider that your failure, not hers. She is a child. You are responsible for managing the situation. Deho swallowed hard. Understood. Corval provided a data pad with detailed information. Temperature requirements for Rin's comfort, dietary needs, behavioral patterns to watch for, warning signs that her predatory instincts were triggering. The list went on for pages. One more thing, Corval said as Deho prepared to leave. My daughter has never been around prey species before. On our world, there is no question of who is predator and who is prey. Here, surrounded by species that run from her, her instincts will be confused and heightened. Be careful, human. The first few days will be the most dangerous. Rin arrived that afternoon. Deho had prepared a corner of his dormitory common room with soft blankets, some books, and a puzzle cube he had brought from Earth. The other students had evacuated the building as soon as they heard of Rex Juvenile was coming. The entire floor was empty except for Deho. When Rin entered, she immediately dropped into a low stance. Her scales rippled, and her claws extended slightly from her fingers. She was testing him, Deho realized. Seeing if he would run, he forced himself to stay calm. He sat down on the floor, cross-legged, and picked up the puzzle cube. He started turning the colored sides, deliberately not looking directly at her. In the research he had done last night, he had learned that direct eye contact with predators could be seen as a challenge. Rin watched him for a long time. She circled the room, never taking her eyes off him. She clicked her claws against the furniture, testing surfaces. Once, she came close enough that Deho could feel the heat radiating from her body. Vrex ran hot, much hotter than humans. He kept working on the puzzle cube. Finally, curiosity overcame caution. Rin moved closer, watching his hands manipulate the cube. When Deho deliberately made a wrong turn, she made a small sound. Not quite a growl, but something close. You see the mistake? Deho asked softly, still not looking directly at her. Rin reached out with one clawed finger and tapped the cube. The tap was surprisingly gentle. She indicated which direction the side should turn. You are right, Deho said. He made the correction. Thank you. By evening, Rin had settled down. She was not exactly relaxed, but she had stopped treating the room like hostile territory. She lay on the blankets Deho had provided, and when he pulled out a book, she moved closer to see what he was doing. This is a story from Earth, Deho explained, about a boy and a tiger who survived together on a boat in the ocean. Would you like to hear it? Rin clicked her claws once. Deho chose to interpret that as yes. He read until his voice grew tired. Rin listened the entire time, her golden eyes fixed on him. When he finally closed the book, she had moved close enough that her shoulder was touching his leg. The heat from her body was intense but not uncomfortable. Good night, Rin, he said softly. She clicked her claws again, softer this time. News of the arrangement spread through the academy faster than Deho expected. By the next morning, students were gathering outside his dormitory windows, trying to get a glimpse of the impossible. A human and a Vrex juvenile coexisting peacefully. Some came to mock. They made bets on how long Deho would last before he quit or got eaten. Others came hoping to witness the famous human unpredictability everyone talked about. A few came out of genuine scientific curiosity. Deho tried to ignore them, but it was difficult. Every time he looked up, there were faces pressed against the windows. Rin noticed too. Her instincts were telling her that being watched by so many potential prey animals meant something. She started getting agitated, pacing the room. Hey, Deho said gently. Want to learn a game? Rin turned to look at him, her tail lashing. It is called hide and seek. I will hide and you try to find me. It will give you something to focus on besides all those watchers. He explained the rules, keeping them simple. Then he went and hid behind a piece of furniture while Rin counted. Well, she could not count in Galactic Standard yet, so he just told her to close her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her entire demeanor changed. The hunt was on. She moved through the room with incredible speed and grace, checking every possible hiding spot. Her movements were efficient and purposeful. This was what she was born to do. She found Deho in less than 30 seconds. Your turn to hide, he said, laughing. They played for an hour. The watching students could not understand what they were seeing. The Vrex juvenile was hunting, yes, but it was controlled, directed. She was using her instincts, but channeling them into play instead of violence. During a lecture later that week, Rin became agitated again. Too many students had gathered outside the windows, and their attention was triggering her predatory response. She lunged at the window suddenly, claws extended, scales rippling in a threat display. The watching students scattered in terror. Alarms went off across the station. Daeho did not flinch. He had been expecting this. He calmly walked over to Rin and placed himself between her and the window. Not as a challenge, but as a redirect. "Hey, focus on me," he said quietly. "Not them. They are scared, and they are making you scared. Focus on me." Rin's breathing was rapid, her claws still extended. But slowly her eyes shifted from the window to Daeho. "Good," he said. "Now let us do something else. Want to work on that puzzle?" It took several minutes, but eventually Rin's hunting stance relaxed. Her claws retracted. She followed Daeho back to the corner where they kept the puzzle cube and other activities. Outside, security arrived, prepared for the worst. They found Daeho and Rin sitting together, working on the puzzle in complete calm. That evening, a Chitik professor named Tikren requested to speak with Daeho. They met in one of the station's observation lounges, overlooking the spectacular view of the nearby nebula. "You are not afraid today," Tikren observed, when she lunged at the window. "Every other species would have run." "I was terrified," Daeho corrected. "My heart was beating so fast I thought it would explode. But you did not run." "No," Daeho agreed, "because running would have made everything worse." She needed someone to stay calm, to show her that the situation was not as dangerous as her instincts were telling her. Tikren clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Do all humans think this way?" "I do not know," Daeho admitted. "I have only been human for 22 years. Still figuring it out." The Chitik professor made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most foolish. Can it be both?" "Perhaps," Tikren said. "Perhaps that is what makes humans so interesting. You do not let fear control your choices. You acknowledge it, and then do what you think is right anyway." After Tikren left, Daeho stayed in the observation lounge for a while, watching the stars. He thought about fear and bravery and the strange line between them. He thought about Rin and how much she had already changed in just a few days. And he thought about what Korval had said. That the first days would be the most dangerous. They had made it through the first week. Now came the real test. Part 3. The Human Method. 3 weeks had passed, and the impossible had become routine. Daeho and Rin had settled into a rhythm that seemed to work. Mornings were for learning. Rin was picking up Galactic Standard at an impressive speed, though her vocal structure made some sounds difficult. Afternoons were for activities that channeled her hunting instincts into productive directions. Evenings were for stories. The watching crowds had not gone away, but they had changed. Now they came to study rather than to gawk. Psychologists took notes. Xenobiologists argued about implications. The entire galaxy seemed to have an opinion about what Daeho was doing. He tried to ignore the attention and focus on Rin. She was changing in ways that surprised him. She asked questions now instead of simply reacting to stimuli. When something broke, she tried to fix it rather than attacking it. She was learning to think before acting. A trait that Korval had mentioned was rare in young Vrex. One afternoon, a piece of equipment in the common room malfunctioned. A small cleaning robot sparked and stopped moving. In her first week, Rin would have attacked it immediately. Her instincts would have registered it as a threat or prey. Instead, she approached it carefully and examined it. She looked at Daeho. "Broken?" she asked. Her Galactic Standard was heavily accented but clear. "Looks like it," Daeho agreed. "Want to see if we can fix it?" They spent an hour taking the robot apart and putting it back together. Rin's claws, which seemed designed only for hunting, proved surprisingly delicate when she wanted them to be. She carefully manipulated tiny components while Daeho held the light. When the robot powered back on, Rin made a sound that Daeho had learned meant pleasure. Not quite a purr, but close. A Luminex scholar named Bright Edge requested a meeting with Daeho. They met in the Academy's main library, surrounded by data storage from 1,000 worlds. "My species has studied the Vrex for decades," Bright Edge said. Her crystalline body refracted the light into rainbow patterns as she spoke. "We have tried to understand how to integrate them into galactic society. Every simulation, every model, every projection said it was impossible. Their predatory instincts are too strong. They cannot learn cooperation or restraint. Rin is learning," Daeho pointed out. "Yes," Bright Edge agreed, and her light pulsed with confusion. "That is what I do not understand. How are you doing this? What technique are you using? What human method have we missed? Deho thought about it. I am not trying to change what she is. I am just helping her learn what she could be. That is not an answer. Yes, it is, Deho said gently. Everyone keeps trying to make the Vrex into something they are not, trying to suppress their instincts or lock them away. I am just showing Rin that she can choose how to use those instincts. She is still a hunter, but she gets to decide what is worth hunting. Bright Edge was silent for a long moment. Your species is very strange, Deho. I know, he replied, smiling. We get that a lot. That evening, Ambassador Corval requested an urgent meeting. Deho arrived at the conference room expecting to be dismissed. The experiment was probably over. He had done his best, but now it was time for professionals to take over. Instead, Corval said something unexpected. I need to tell you the truth about why we came here. Deho sat down, suddenly alert. The Vrex are dying, Corval continued. His voice was as calm as ever, but there was something beneath it now. Something that might have been desperation, not physically. Our bodies are strong. Our numbers are stable, but as a species we are stagnating. We have conquered our world so completely that there is nothing left to strive for. Our young are born with perfect hunting instincts but no purpose. We are becoming creatures of pure instinct with no direction. I do not understand, Deho said. We evolved to hunt, Corval explained. Every aspect of our biology, our psychology, our culture is built around the hunt. But what happens when there is nothing left to hunt? When you have already conquered everything? We do not know how to exist without challenge, without struggle, without purpose beyond survival. He looked at Deho with those golden predator eyes. We joined the Concordat not for resources or territory. We joined because we are desperate for something our species has forgotten. We need to evolve beyond the hunt. But we do not know how. We do not even know if it is possible. And Rin? Deho asked quietly. She is our test. My daughter represents the future of our species if we have one. I brought her here to see if she could learn to be more than what our instincts demand. For 3 weeks I have watched you teach her things that no Vrex has ever learned. Patience, curiosity, choice. You are showing my daughter a path we never knew existed. The weight of that statement settled over Deho like a physical thing. He was not just babysitting a child. He was potentially shaping the future of an entire species. That is a lot of pressure, he said, trying to keep his voice light. Yes, Corval agreed. Which is why I'm asking not as an ambassador but as a father, will you continue? Will you keep teaching my daughter what it means to be more than a hunter? Deho thought about Rin, about how she listened to stories with complete focus, about how she asked questions now, about how she had learned to channel her instincts into games and puzzles and problem-solving. Yes, he said, I will try. The next day, Director Malin made an announcement that changed everything. The Academy would conduct a formal test. If Deho could successfully integrate Rin into a standard classroom environment for 1 full week without incident, the Concordat would approve a formal human-Vrex cultural exchange program. The implications were enormous. Success would mean humans became the bridge species between the Vrex and the rest of the galaxy. Failure would confirm what most species already believed, that the Vrex were too dangerous to integrate. No pressure at all. The other students were informed of the test. A classroom would be selected, and any student willing to participate would receive academic credit and recognition. Director Malin made it clear that participation was completely voluntary. No one would be forced to share space with a Vrex juvenile. Deho expected to be sitting in an empty classroom. Instead, Minsu approached him the next day. Minsu was another human student, studying xenobiology. He had a constant smile and seemed to think everything was interesting. I want to volunteer, Minsu said. For the classroom thing with Rin, Deho stared at him. You understand what you are signing up for? A chance to observe Rex behavior up close? In a controlled environment? This is literally what I came to the Academy for. Of course I am signing up. You are not worried about, being eaten? Minsu laughed. Deho, you have been living with her for weeks. You are still alive. She is clearly capable of not eating people. Besides, humans are supposed to be the species that does weird things, right? Might as well lean into it. Then Bora volunteered. She was a human linguistics student who had been recording Rin's vocalizations from a distance. I have been studying Vrex communication patterns. This would be invaluable research. Plus, honestly, I am curious. Everyone says it cannot be done. I want to see if they are wrong. One by one, more human students volunteered. Not all of them. Some were genuinely afraid, and Daeho respected that. But enough signed up that the classroom would not be empty. A Chitik student named Victor complained loudly about the test. This is reckless endangerment. You are risking students' lives to prove a point. The wreck should never have been allowed here in the first place. Daeho understood the fear. He really did. But something about the absolute certainty in Victor's voice bothered him. It was not just fear. It was prejudice dressed up as caution. The night before the test began, Daeho could not sleep. He lay in his bed listening to Rin's breathing from across the room. She slept differently than humans, more like a cat, with periods of complete stillness followed by brief movements. He thought about everything that could go wrong. One mistake, one moment of lost control, and people could get hurt. The entire program would be shut down. The Vrex would leave, and they would probably never try to join Galactic Society again. But then he thought about Rin, asking questions in her improving galactic standard. About her learning to fix things instead of breaking them. About the way she listened to stories with complete focus. She was not a monster. She was a child learning to be more than her instincts. And tomorrow she would get the chance to prove it to the galaxy. Ready for tomorrow? He asked quietly into the darkness. There was a moment of silence. Then Rin's voice, soft and clear, scared. It was the first time she had admitted to feeling fear. Daeho smiled in the darkness. Me too, he said. But we will do it together. That is what makes it possible. Another silence. Then, together. Daeho closed his eyes and finally fell asleep. Part 4. When Predators Learn to Trust. The integrated classroom was larger than Daeho expected. Professor Hajun, a human xenosociology instructor, had volunteered to lead the course. He stood at the front of the room with an expression that was calm but focused. Behind that calm, Daeho could see the same nervousness he felt in his own chest. The room divided naturally. Human students sat on one side, comfortable with the situation or at least pretending to be. Alien students who had volunteered sat on the other side, maintaining careful distance. In the middle, between the two groups, sat Daeho and Rin. Rin was tense. Her scales rippled occasionally, a sign of stress that Daeho had learned to recognize. She was surrounded by prey species. Every instinct she had was telling her to hunt, to chase, to attack. The fact that she was sitting still at all was a testament to how much she had learned. Remember what we practiced, Daeho whispered to her. Breathing exercises. When you feel the instinct getting too strong, focus on your breathing. Rin nodded slightly. She closed her eyes and took slow, deliberate breaths. The technique was something humans used for anxiety. Daeho had taught it to her, hoping it would work on instinct-driven behavior. So far, it seemed to help. Professor Hajun began the lecture. It was about resource distribution in multi-species colonies. Dry material, deliberately chosen to be non-threatening. But Daeho barely heard the words. He was too focused on watching Rin, ready to intervene if her control slipped. The first day passed without incident. The second day was harder. More students had gathered outside the windows and their attention triggered Rin's predatory response. But she managed it, using the breathing techniques and focusing on the lesson instead of the watchers. By the third day, something unexpected happened. The students started interacting. Minsu approached during the break between lectures. He had brought his lunch, a strange human meal that involved bread and various fillings. Rin watched him with intense focus. Want to try some? Minsu asked, holding out half of his sandwich. Rin looked at Daeho, uncertain. He nodded encouragement. She took the sandwich carefully, her claws delicate despite their size. She sniffed it, analyzed it, then took a small bite. Her face immediately showed disgust. What is the green thing? She asked, her accent still heavy but understandable. Lettuce, Minsu explained, laughing. It is a vegetable. Plant food. Why do humans eat plants? Rin asked, genuinely confused. You are not herbivores. We are omnivores, Minsu explained. We eat everything. Meat, plants, whatever is available. Our ancestors learned to be flexible about food sources. Helped us survive, Rin considered this. Efficient. Vrex only eat meat. Limits food options. True, Minsu agreed. But here, try this part without the lettuce. It has meat. They spent the rest of the break discussing food cultures. Other students began to listen, curious despite their fear. The conversation was normal, casual, completely unremarkable, except for the fact that one participant was a Vrex juvenile. Bo-Ra started recording Rin's vocalizations during class. She had specialized equipment that captured audio at frequencies most species could not hear. After class, she played some of the recordings back to Rin. "Listen to this," Bo-Ra said. "This is what you sound like when you are stressed. Hear how your clicking patterns become more rapid and louder?" Rin listened, her head tilted. "I did not realize I was doing that." "Most of us do not realize how we sound to others," Bo-Ra explained. "But if you are aware of it, you can control it. When you click rapidly like this, it sounds aggressive to prey species. It makes them afraid." "I do not want to make them afraid," Rin said quietly. "Then try this," Bo-Ra suggested. "When you feel stressed, try to keep your clicking slow and rhythmic. Like this." She played an example. "It sounds much calmer." Rin practiced clicking her claws slowly and deliberately. It was difficult, like trying to control your heartbeat, but she was determined. The real breakthrough came during a group project. Professor Ha-Jun assigned teams to analyze trade route efficiency. The teams were mixed with both human and alien students. Rin was placed in a group with Daeho Minsu and a Chitik student named Victar. Victar had been one of the loudest voices against the integration test. He sat as far from Rin as possible, his mandibles tight with anxiety. He refused to make eye contact and contributed to the group discussion only in brief, clipped sentences. They worked in uncomfortable silence for the first hour. Then Rin asked a question. "Why do trade routes avoid the Kelmar sector? The distance is shorter through that space." Victar answered automatically, his academic knowledge overriding his fear for a moment. "Kelmar sector has unstable asteroids, too dangerous for regular traffic. But if ships had better shielding," Rin continued, "the shorter route would save resources." "Correct?" "In theory," Victar admitted. "But the cost of improved shielding would negate the savings." They debated the economics for several minutes. Victar relaxed slightly, drawn into the intellectual puzzle. Rin was asking good questions, challenging assumptions, thinking critically about the problem. Finally, Victar said something unexpected. "Your perspective is useful. Vrex think about efficiency differently than most species." Rin looked at him directly. "I make you uncomfortable." "I can sense your fear." Victar froze. Everyone in the group went silent. "Yes," Victar admitted. "You frighten me. My species is prey. You are a predator. This is biology. What would make you feel safe?" Rin asked. The question stunned everyone. A Vrex considering another's feelings was unprecedented. It went against everything the galaxy thought they knew about the species. Victar thought about it. "I do not know. I have never considered that safety around a Vrex was possible." "I do not want to hurt you," Rin said carefully. "I am learning to be more than my instincts. But I do not know how to make you believe that." "You just did," Victar said quietly. "By asking. By caring about my answer. Predators do not ask prey how to make them comfortable." The group returned to their work, but something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Possibility. Not everyone was pleased with the progress. A faction of traditionalist species saw the integration as a threat. They whispered in corridors and held private meetings. If humanity could befriend apex predators, what power might they accumulate? What changes might they force on the established order? A Narration delegate named Solvar led the opposition. He worked quietly, subtly, making sure the integration program faced obstacles at every turn. Equipment malfunctions, scheduling conflicts, rumors spread through carefully chosen channels. Solvar did not want violence. He just wanted the humans to fail, to prove that some species could never be integrated, and he was willing to create the circumstances for that failure. On the 5th day of the test, Professor Ha-Jun organized a field exercise in the station's biodome. It was a large enclosed space with artificial ecosystems from various worlds. Students would observe and catalog different environmental adaptation strategies. The biodome was beautiful, full of strange plants and controlled climate zones. Students spread out in their assigned groups, taking notes and samples. Then the alarm started. Containment failure in the xenobiology section. Several aggressive specimens had escaped into the biodome. The species were not deadly, but they were dangerous. Large, territorial, and confused by the sudden freedom. Students scattered immediately. The alien species fled following survival instincts honed over millions of years. Run from danger. Seek safety. Survive. The humans did something different. Daeho immediately started counting heads. Everyone here? Minsu, Bora, check the other groups. Make sure everyone is accounted for. Instead of running, they organized. Hajun positioned himself between the escaped creatures and the younger students. Minsu and Bora did quick head counts and directed students toward safe zones. Rin stood frozen, her instincts screaming at her. Everything in her biology was telling her to hunt. The escaped creatures were prey. She was a predator. This was what she was born to do. But Daeho was in danger. His back was to one of the creatures, and he was focused on helping a small Luminex student who had frozen in panic. Rin made a choice. She did not attack. She hunted. She moved with the speed and grace her species was famous for, but with control she had learned from weeks with Daeho. She did not kill or injure. She herded. She used her presence, her size, her predatory nature to direct the escaped creatures away from the students and toward the containment teams that were arriving. It was hunting with purpose. Hunting with rules. Hunting that protected instead of destroyed. Security arrived to find an impossible scene. A Vrex juvenile working in coordination with human students to protect other species. Every assumption they had about predator behavior was challenged by what they witnessed. Sulvar tried to flee the scene, but Rin blocked his path. She did not touch him. She simply stood there looking at him with those golden eyes. A predator who knew when she was being stalked. Security arrested Sulvar when they found evidence of his sabotage. The integration test was saved, but more importantly, something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had watched a predator choose to protect prey, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Concordat Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in a circular arrangement, each in their own environmental pod suited to their biology. The air was filled with the sounds of a dozen different translation systems working simultaneously. Daeho sat in the human delegation section, feeling very small. Director Mei Lin sat beside him, calm and professional. Around them, the fate of the human Vrex integration program was being debated. Most species recommended termination. The arguments were logical, carefully constructed, backed by data and precedent. Yes, the test had been successful, but it was only one case. One success did not prove reproducibility. Humanity's methods were reckless. The risk was too great. The Vrex were too dangerous to integrate on a larger scale. The debate went on for hours. Daeho listened to species after species explain why what he had done with Rin could never work as a broader program. Their fear was understandable. Their caution made sense. But underneath it all, Daeho heard what they were really saying. They were afraid of change. Then Ambassador Korval stood to speak. The chamber fell silent immediately. The Vrex were the subject of this debate, but Korval had remained quiet until now, listening to everyone else's opinions. My species has been apex predators for millions of years, Korval began. His deep voice filled the chamber without need for amplification. We have conquered our world. We have perfected the hunt. We believed this was our purpose, our destiny, our pinnacle. He paused, letting his words sink in. We were wrong. We had not reached a summit. We had reached a dead end. A species cannot survive on instinct alone, no matter how perfect those instincts are. We were slowly dying, and we did not even realize it. Korval gestured toward where Rin sat beside Daeho. She was calm, attentive, watching the proceedings with intelligent focus. This human did something no species in the galaxy attempted. He did not try to cage my daughter's nature. He did not try to suppress what she is. He taught her that a predator could choose what to hunt. That strength could serve purpose beyond survival. That fear could become respect. The chamber remained silent. Every species was listening now. Humanity is dangerous, Korval continued, and several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Not because they lack fear, but because they refuse to let fear dictate their choices. They befriend what others flee from. They see potential where others see only threat. This makes them the most terrifying species in the Concordat. He let that statement hang in the air for a moment. And the most necessary. The vote was close, but the program was approved. The Concordat would establish a cultural integration initiative, starting with the Vrex but extending to other traditionally isolated species. Humanity would lead the effort, serving as bridge builders between species that had never been able to coexist. After the vote, Director Mei Lin approached Daeho with an offer. The Concordat wanted to create a formal position, Interspecies Relations Coordinator. They wanted him to lead the new program. Daeho laughed. Director, I am just a student. I barely know what I am doing. Give the job to someone qualified. Mei Lin smiled, something she did not do often. Daeho, you babysat a hunter-killer's child for an entire semester and lived to tell about it. You turned one of the galaxy's most feared species into a curious student who asks questions and cares about others' feelings. I cannot think of anyone more qualified. I just did what felt right, Daeho protested. Exactly, Mei Lin said. That is what makes you perfect for this. You do not overthink. You do not let fear or protocol stop you from trying. You see people, not categories. That is what this program needs. Daeho looked at Rin, who was talking with Minsu and Bora about something that was making all of them laugh. She had come so far from the aggressive, instinct-driven juvenile who had first arrived at the academy. Okay, he said. I will try. The last day of the semester arrived too quickly. Rin would be returning home with her father, and Daeho would be starting his new position. They had both changed so much that it was hard to remember how things had been at the beginning. They sat together in the observation lounge watching the stars. It had become their spot, a place to talk about difficult things without the pressure of being watched. Will you visit our world? Rin asked. Her galactic standard had improved dramatically. The accent was still there, but her vocabulary and grammar were nearly perfect. If you will have me, Daeho replied. Our elders will want to hunt you, Rin said matter-of-factly. It is tradition. When important visitors come, we test them. I know, Daeho said. He had researched Vrex culture extensively over the past months. They will want to see if you are truly brave or just foolish. Probably a bit of both, Daeho admitted. Rin clicked her claws in the pattern that Daeho now recognized as laughter. Good. I will teach them what you taught me. That the best hunts are the ones where everyone survives to hunt another day. She stood to leave, then paused. Daeho, thank you for seeing me as more than a monster. You were never a monster, Rin. You were always just a kid trying to figure out who you wanted to be. 6 months later, the human delegation arrived on the Vrex homeworld. It was Daeho, Mei Lin, Minsu, Bora, Haojun, and a dozen other humans who had volunteered for the cultural exchange program. The Vrex homeworld was exactly what Daeho expected from a death world. Hot, hostile, filled with creatures that seemed designed specifically to kill. The Vrex cities were impressive, all sharp angles and efficient design, but what surprised Daeho were the young Vrex. They followed the human delegation everywhere, curious about the strange prey species that did not run. They watched everything the humans did with intense focus. Rin had become something of a celebrity among young Vrex. She told stories about the academy, about the other species, about the things she had learned, and slowly other young Vrex began to ask questions. Could they learn these things too? Could they be more than just hunters? The presentation took place in the Great Hall of the Vrex Council. Hundreds of adult Vrex filled the space, all watching Daeho with predatory focus. He was not afraid, not anymore. He understood what he was looking at. People who wanted to change but did not know how. He talked about human child-rearing techniques, about teaching problem-solving skills, about channeling strong instincts into productive directions, about the difference between suppressing nature and giving it purpose. The Vrex listened with complete attention. It was like being watched by hundreds of Rins, all analyzing his words for truth and usefulness. When he finished, the eldest Vrex approached. Tormak was ancient, his scales scarred from countless hunts. He moved slowly, but with the confidence of someone who had never met anything more dangerous than himself. Until now. Tormak extended a massive clawed hand toward Daeho. Every Vrex in the hall watched this moment. It was a gesture of respect, of equals meeting equals. "Teach us," Tormach said. "Teach us to be more than what we were born to be." Deho took the hand carefully. The claws could have torn him apart easily, but the grip was gentle, controlled, intentional. "That is what friends do," Deho replied. Back on Earth, news of the successful Vrex integration spread quickly. Humanity celebrated, not really understanding what they had accomplished. They had made friends with the galaxy's apex predators. They had done what everyone said was impossible. Dozens of other species submitted applications for cultural liaison programs. The isolationists wanted contact. The fearful wanted understanding. Species that had avoided the Concordat for centuries were suddenly interested in joining. All because one human had agreed to babysit a child everyone else was too afraid to approach. In her office on the Concordat station, Director Mei Lin reviewed the applications. Professor Hajun sat across from her reading the same reports. "They are all afraid of each other," Hajun observed. "Every species sees the galaxy as predators and prey, threats and victims, us and them, except humans," Mei Lin said quietly. "We are both," Hajun continued. "Or neither, depending on the situation and what is needed. And that is what scares them," Mei Lin finished. "We are the species that looks at a monster and sees a student. We are the species that offers to babysit the unbabysittable." Hajun grinned. Aggressive friendship, humanity's most dangerous weapon. Outside the window, the academy's courtyard was full of activity. Human students and Vrex juveniles played together, an improvised game that involved hunting and hiding and lots of laughter. Other species watched from safe distances, but the distances were getting smaller. A Cheetic student joined the game, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. A Luminex followed. Then a Nyreme in a mobile tank. The barriers were coming down one game at a time. Deho watched from his new office. He was still getting used to the title on his door, Interspecies Relations Coordinator. It felt too formal for what he actually did, which was mostly just help people see each other as people instead of categories. Rin approached his office with a new group of young Vrex. They were the first of many who would attend the academy, learning to be more than their instincts demanded. "Ready for another semester?" Rin asked. Deho smiled. "Ready as I will ever be." They walked together toward the classroom, predator and prey, friend and friend. Behind them, the galaxy slowly learned that the line between monster and student was thinner than anyone had believed, and that sometimes all it took to cross that line was someone willing to try. The human delegation expanded. More Vrex came to the academy. Other species followed. The isolationists opened their borders. The fearful learned trust, and at the center of it all were humans, doing what they had always done best, making friends with things that should have eaten them. Years later, historians would debate the significance of that first semester. Some would call it the turning point in galactic civilization. Others would argue it was simply the natural evolution of interspecies relations. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy was never the same after a human offered to babysit a Vrex child. Deho did not think about history or significance. He just kept doing what felt right. Teaching, learning, helping people see past their fears to the possibilities beyond. And when new humans arrived at the academy, nervous and uncertain about living among aliens, he always told them the same thing. "Everyone here is just trying to figure out who they want to be. Some of them have claws and scales. Some of them have tentacles or wings or crystalline bodies. But underneath all of that, they are just people. Treat them like people and you will be fine." It was simple advice. Maybe too simple. But it worked. And in a galaxy that had spent millions of years divided by fear and instinct and biology, simple was exactly what they needed. The species that teaches monsters to dream. That was what other civilizations started calling humanity. It was meant as a warning at first, a reminder that humans were dangerous in their own unique way. But slowly it became something else, a hope. Because if humans could teach predators to choose peace, if they could help monsters learn to dream of being more than their instincts demanded, then maybe change was possible for everyone. Maybe the galaxy did not have to be divided forever into hunters and hunted. Maybe there was a third option. And maybe, just maybe, humanity could show them how to find it. One friendship at a time.